Thomas Campbell is a former Nesta physicist. His expertise is in simulations and large, complex systems. He's also a consciousness explorer who teaches people how to meditate, grow up, and become love. His groundbreaking research unifies physics and metaphysics, mind and matter, the normal and the paranormal. Recently, he designed a set of physics experiments that would revolutionize our understanding of reality. The design was published in a peer-reviewed journal of quantum mechanics. His book, My Big TOE, has been translated into several languages. His YouTube videos have inspired millions to live wisely and courageously. To work with Tom directly or to learn more about his latest creation, Tom's Parque, a virtual imaginality game, check out the links within the description. Hi, Tom.
Hello, Andy. It's good to be here again. It's always fun to talk with you. And now we have Nathan this time with us, so this should be a lot of fun.
Yes, it will. And Nathan has all the questions, and some of them are from our Discord group, My Big TOE group. So without further ado, Nathan, launch the questions.
I'd be happy to. There's so much exciting stuff happening with MBT and your work, Tom. And, we could go a lot of different directions. We'd like to focus on the Parque a little bit today, and maybe we'll find our way into some experiments or other just general questions. But really, the Parque is the focus today, which is exciting because that just recently launched, right? So could you give us a little bit of background briefly? Because most of your viewers by now know about Tom's Parque, a little bit of its development and what it's for. But for those who might be new, and anything worth saying bears repeating. So would you mind just sharing a little bit about the creation of Tom's Parque and what it's for?
Yeah, well, Tom's Parque is a tool set, really. It's a tool set that I created initially to help those who have a hard time getting their intellect to sit down and be quiet while they are attempting some sort of paranormal thing, whether it's out of body or remote viewing or, telepathy, communicating, conscious to consciousness, getting data. All those things require you to get into an intuitive state and to let the intellectual state go. All the paranormal things happen in an intuitive space. None of them happen in an intellectual space. So people who, live their lives and work and constantly are in that intellectual mode, which is typical in our culture, that we spend most of our time in that intellectual mode. And sometimes it gets really hard for people to let that go. And if they can't get into that intuitive space rather than in the intellectual space, then they just get frustrated. It just doesn't seem to work for them. Or it works for them every once in a while, kind of spontaneously, when they just happen to get into that intuitive state for some reason that they don't know. So the Tom's Parque was initially made for those people, to give them an exercise that would allow them over time, if they keep doing the exercise, it would allow them over time to get more acquainted with their intuitive side and to practice letting the intellectual side rest. Just let it sit and watch for a while rather than control and judge and analyze and compare and all the things that the intellect is constantly doing. So it started out that way, but then as I produced that, I saw that just with a little bit of additional work, I could make it also a platform for people to engage the non-physical, engage the paranormal. I could set up some situations within the park that made that easier, kind of leads people into that. So that was helpful. And then I realized that the thing that was missing was the interaction with other people, because that's where we learn. That's a great deal of our learning and growing. That's a great deal of how we understand who we are, is how we interact with other people. So then I populated it full of people who work at the park, a lot of staff there, and encouraged interaction, fraternization, connection, people to people. And at first I thought, well, people are going to say, oh, I'm talking to myself. This is my imaginary being. So now I have an imaginary playmate too, just like my 3-year-old. But the fact is that all realities are equivalent as far as their ability to help you learn and grow. They're all equally real, whether it's your daydreams, your night dreams, this virtual reality, all of those, you have opportunities to make choices, and you evolve and de-evolve by those choices. So I thought it would be really nice to give people a very safe, very, benign, in the sense that there's very little risk, very little to lose, nothing that will bite you or get you or, hurt you, or there's no problems there, except for the problems you bring with it. If you come to it with fear, then you may create some problems there, but I make it clear that anything that's negative in your Tom's Park experience is what you bring to it. So then that helps people as well. So then I set up all kinds of little interesting things for people to do, ways for them to connect with Tom's Park. I have a movie theater where you can watch your past lives. I have a hot springs where you can get rid of your tension and your stress and your illnesses. I have just a lot of other things like that. You can go horseback riding and get in the water with a jet ski. There's just so many things to do that the idea is that you start with your imagination. You start with usually the more physical things, like getting in the water, doing the jet skis, riding a horse, taking a hike. You start with the more physical things if you're a beginner. And then when you get to the point that your physical story, and you can call it a daydream if you like, but that your story that you're creating in your mind starts to take on a life of its own. In other words, you stop actively making up the dialogue on all sides. It just kind of happens. And as you get to that point, then you just let that happen, because that's when you transition from it being a daydream of your creation to it being a data stream that you're receiving from the larger consciousness system, which isn't any different than being in this reality that we're in now, or in a dream reality, or in and out of body. All of those, you're getting a data stream from the larger conscious system, and you interact with that data stream. So this allows people to practice letting that daydream roll on its own, kind of the story unravel just as it does. And when they get good at that, then they're also getting good at working in the intuitive level, because that happens in the intuitive level. That doesn't happen in the intellectual level. In the intellectual level, you're making up all the words on both sides. You're running it. It's you deciding what this person's going to say and what you're going to say, and how the jet ski is going to work, and you're doing that all in your intellect, and you know that, you're aware of that. But when that happens by itself, it's not you making it up anymore. You can very seamlessly slip into a data stream from the LCS that picks up the same story, doing exactly the same thing, and you never really are aware of the transition. It's just that now you're just letting it flow and seeing what happens and interacting with it like you would interacting here or anywhere else, any reality frame, in a dream or any place. So that enables people to practice at developing their intuitive side with a tool that is fun, interesting, and multi-sensual. It's, it has things to smell and things to taste and things to touch, things to hear, things to see. It has all your senses there. And the more you can engage all your senses, the easier it is to let go of your intellect, because you'll be so busy just processing what's going on that you will forget that that this is something you started to create, and now it's creating itself. So this will give people some experience of letting their intellect go, encouraging their intuitive side to be active, and encouraging it to be active in multidimensionally. Like I say, sight, taste, hearing, feeling, everything. Everything's going to be there. And now there's also social situations there. Every Saturday night, there's a dance at Tom's Park. There's lots of things that happen. And there's always someone that you can talk to, take a walk with, take a hike with, play volleyball with, whatever it is you want to do. It's there for you to do it. So that's kind of the basic idea. And like I say, the net result of all of that is to give you another reality frame in which you can interact, in which you can try new things, in which you can be new ways. You can try out what it means to be, completely you, authentic. Because a lot of people are afraid of changing. Well, what if I change who I am and how I react? What's that going to do to my life and my friends and my situations and where I work? If I suddenly am kind of different, well, it's a little scary. You're getting by okay now and you don't want to mess it up. So we're very hesitant in this reality frame to make those changes, to stretch out and be different, because people will notice, and it may not all be positive. We may decide we want to change friends and change situations and that sort of thing. It may cause trouble. So this reality I've created in Tom's Park is one where you can take those chances. You can be that person. You can try this approach in your interaction with people. Maybe you're very shy. You kind of have a fear of rejection. Well, here you can be bolder because everything here is gentle. Everything here is positive. All the staff are low entropy, really, really good people. So it's just a good place to go and be. Experiment with yourself. So that's Tom's Park. So it's not a one-time thing. It's a tool that you have to use and use again and keep using. And the more you use it, the better you'll be with it. So if you use it, 100 times, then getting into that intuitive state will just be simple. You'll just get there almost instantly. When you use it the first time, that may not be true. You may, be stuck for a while, but you just keep practicing, because letting a daydream turn into something that kind of rolls on in its own way is an easy thing for most people to do. Most people do that anyway. Very seldom are our daydreams scripted. Everybody's saying what we want them to say. Mostly we let them run. That's what makes them interesting. That's what makes them fun. That's what gives them their value to us. So now we're doing it in a more methodical way that will help us learn. And we have things like the fear clinic, where you can go and work on your fears, and you will get a staff person assigned to you. And they'll kind of be your advocate in this process of getting rid of fear. And you can go and connect with them and talk to them, and you can talk about your fears. Maybe you don't have anybody in this reality that you can just talk about all your fears to and be that honest. You always have to worry about your image here. What do people think of me? Well, there you don't. There you don't. You can just be open and be honest and tell people exactly how you feel and see how that works. So that's kind of Tom's Park in a nutshell. It's a tool set for developing the quality of your consciousness. I guess in the shortest description would be just that, a tool set for developing the quality of your consciousness. And it's a tool set that should be used often and regularly. And the one warning I give people is don't let it become a tool set that you spend all of your time in. You don't want, this should not be an escape from life here. It's not like you go to Tom's Park and everything feels good, and then you just stay there maybe 4, 5, 6 hours a day because that's just really good, and you start to neglect things in this reality, and that is not a good thing. This reality is the main place where the rubber meets the road for you and for your growth, and you have to deal with it. This reality does have hard things, does have harsh things, does have negative things in it, and you have to deal with all of that. So Tom's Park is not the reality you should choose to live in most of the time, but it's a great place to grow up. It's a great place to experiment and develop your intuition. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Now it's a book, and it comes in an audio book, comes in a paperback book, a hardback book, and it comes in an ebook. It comes in all those different kinds, and each one has some advantages and some disadvantages, but they're all basically the same price, except for the hardback. And we raised that price just as much as extra that it costs us to get a hardback. So actually 30 cents less than that. So we make 30 cents less on every book because we didn't want to charge. We wanted to charge even dollars, and we went under rather than over. So that's the way it is. And it might seem kind of expensive to people who are just buying a book. It's a book that costs as much as a textbook. I don't know how far back you were in college, but if you recall, those books that you bought when you were a college student were 50, 60, 70, 120. They were all very expensive books. You could easily go in a bookstore, at the beginning of the year, for a semester, and drop, $300 or $400. Buying books was a expensive thing. Well, my book's about in that same price range as a textbook. So it is expensive, but it's not just something you read and then put on the shelf. This is a tool. It's more like a course, if you like. It's more like a training course and a tool for that training course. And it's something you'll use hopefully for years, or at least for many days, until you get so good at it that you don't need the tool anymore. But still, there'd be the relationships you'll build. Some of the people you'll meet there will become friends. They'll become lifelong friends that you'll interact with. It's not just pretend. These are entities just like you and I are, and they can interact with you. They're very high quality entities, but they also, have their own life and their own ways of seeing things. You interact with them, and you're going to get a very similar interaction as you do to anybody, or to a lot of people. So a lot of those will become people you go back to see, confidants, people you can really be honest with, that sort of thing. So it's not something that you read once and put back on a bookshelf. So it's the price, though a little high, considering what you get out of it. It's actually very, very reasonable. You'll get a lot more use out of Tom's Park than you will out of most textbooks. Typically, when the course is over, the textbook's over too. You don't visit it again, but this is something you'll visit maybe for years and years. So anyway, that's Tom's Park in a short blurb.
So Tom, we have a friend named Dave, and he was able to practice and get richer sensory experience in the non-physical matter reality through using Tom's Park. What might be waiting for us who are getting better and better at sensory experience in the park?
Well, there's a whole set of things. There's probably 5 or 6 ways in the park that you can experience the larger reality. Different methods, different ways of going. The easiest is one where you just get a list. There's like 12 things on the list, and you can just pick one, and there you go. That is kind of the simplest. But then they progressively get to where it's each one has a different approach. Each one is a really different way that you have to approach it and do it. So I think what you would get as you get better and better at this, you will start working with these ways of connecting to the larger reality for whatever reason. To have a chat with the LCS, or to get some data out of a database, or remote view something, to heal, to whatever, just to learn. And you'll learn different ways to approach it. And as you learn different ways, your own way will start to develop, which is the point. And I tell people, customize this as you go. Make it your own. So you start customizing and you say, well, I sort of go off this way, but then these other things happen. Well, don't say throw those away because they weren't written in Tom's Park. You go work with whatever works. So it's going to help people develop their own style and their own way of doing things, but it gives them a place to start. Actually, it gives them, 6 places to start in different ways. So I think that's, for the advanced user, it's going to make their experiencing the larger reality easier and more, more effective, I guess, and more reliable, because they will have now this Tom's Park platform in which to launch from. And after you've done that 20, 30, 50 times, just going to Tom's Park will put you in the right state of mind. All you have to do is, go there and bingo, you'll immediately start to get in the right space because you've associated that, at your being level, you've associated that place, that space with, going places, doing, exploring the larger reality system. So all you're going to have to do is just show up there and immediately you'll be ready to launch. Whereas if you just are doing it on your own, then every day's different and what you bring to it's different. And this creates a launch pad that'll make it easy out of habit just to go there and start from that space. Now, eventually, you can wean yourself off that to where you don't need to use Tom's Park. But that's okay too. But most people aren't there yet. About 99.99% of the people I see in these courses where I'm trying to help them explore the larger reality, they need all the help they can get. And if they graduate from Tom's Park and really don't need it anymore, then good for them. They should just leave it or share it, So that's what I think it will help for the more seasoned, the more expert person. It'll give them a steady launch pad that will work more easily than them trying to create a launch pad every time they try. And it will help them develop their own ways of doing things, their own custom ways of going about these. So I think that will be good. So it's good for beginners. It's good for those who really struggle, and it's good for those who are already pretty good at it. I think it'll make both sets of people better and more reliable. The intuition can be just as accurate and just as reliable as the intellect. To be honest, I would say it generally is more accurate and more reliable than the intellect. But that takes practice to get it there. For the average person, they have intuition, but it comes and goes, and sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong, and it's not very reliable, and it doesn't seem to work when they really want it to, and it's just kind of a wild thing that needs to be tamed. Well, that's true. If you haven't put in the time to develop it, then it's a wild thing that needs to be tamed. So would be your intellect. If you never exercised your intellect, it would be a wild thing that would need to be tamed. So it takes time and takes effort to do that.
Is there something specific in the park that you would recommend to a beginner?
Well, yes, to a beginner, so someone who's just starting this, I would say find activities there, mostly the physical type of activities that interest you. Maybe it's swimming, maybe it's snorkeling or scuba diving, maybe it's hiking, whatever. Maybe it's just lying in the sunshine, on the grass, but something that interests you, something that you can get involved in, or maybe it's making friends, talking to the people who are there. And we'll just do that. Just do that for a while. Don't try to make anything particular of it. Don't search for that transition point when, it starts off on its own, because if you search for it, it'll ruin it. That's your intellect wanting to judge, and that will mess it up. So just experience it. Have fun. And I'd say if you're a beginner, your first 4 or 5 or 10 times you go there shouldn't be anything more than to find something interesting to do. Just have fun. There's lots of interesting things there, and you can play with the kind of beam me up, Scotty, things from the travel agency there that'll send you off on some sort of trip. Play with those. I mean, I have some interesting things there. One of them is it'll beam you up to a spaceship, or to an alien world, as well as a lot of other things. But these are just triggers, you see. I lead you up to a situation and get you oriented in a particular direction, and then I leave it to you. I leave it to your imagination. I never tell you what any of these things will actually do or be like, or what any of the people will actually do or be like. But I lead you up to situations where you're ready for something within a specified context, and now you're open to do what you do with it. Start with your imagination. See where it goes. More familiar you get, the less your intellect's going to want to need to be in charge. It'll just let you go do it. So beginners, just have fun. Enjoy it. Try some of the things, get into the hot tub. It's not a hot tub, but the hot springs, and just try things. See how it feels. Go to the lily pond or lotus pond or whatever it is, lily pond, I think, and just feel the energy there. Just feel that. Just walk in and sit down and feel that place. Or in the library, just feel as you walk into that. It'll be different. You'll feel different when you're there, and kind of sense, what is that? And play with it. So have fun, I guess, is what I tell people, whether they're beginners or not. Have fun. Make it a fun place, and then see how it develops. Just be open. Be skeptical. But be open to let whatever happens. Just experience.
On that topic of being open, Tom, I was wondering if I could read one of our community members' questions, because I think a lot of people resonated with this, and maybe you can speak to it a little bit. That would help. Patrick writes, I'm still working on getting to the park for the first time. While the book gives a detailed description of the park, it's missing instruction on how to get there. For the left-brainers who are still struggling to tune their radios to that NPMR Tom's Park station, what does Tom recommend? Anything specific around tips other than rewatching his YouTube videos, trying binaural beats, and practice?
Well, that's someone who needs practice just using their imagination. You see, you get there in your imagination. You imagine it. Because I've given you enough description, here's a beach and there's a lake and there's certain things here. And, I've given a lot of description about what it's like. Well, you need to just go there and imagine it. Even if that's difficult for you at first, even if it's all intellectual, that's okay. That's the point. You go there and imagine it. And in the 10th time that you go there and imagine it, that'll get easier and easier and easier, and then eventually you'll go there and it'll just unwind all by itself. You won't have to imagine it very long. But the point is, you just start by imagining it, even if it's just imagining the things that I described. Oh, here's the beach. Here's Uncle Tom's, food stand there, and here's the lake, and here's this, and here's that. Just imagine it. Unfortunately, in our culture, we give very little value to imagination. Anything that's in your imagination is considered junk. It's not important. It's not significant. It's just junk. It's stuff you make up. It's the useless ramblings of a mind that's not busy doing something more useful. And that's the attitude we have of imagination. But our imagination is a very powerful tool, and it can be put to a very powerful use, which is what Tom's Park is doing with it. Your imagination is you as consciousness creating a data stream. Well, that's pretty impressive. You as a piece of consciousness not only get a data stream, but you can create a data stream. And just practicing doing that in multiple senses is a great way to, work the muscles a little bit on that imagination. The muscles is a decent analogy. When you start out, if you're very weak, you don't get strong just because you lift a heavy weight one day. You have to lift that weight and lift it tomorrow, lift it the next day, lift it the next week. And maybe 3 months later, you start feeling a little stronger and you can make the weight a little heavier. But Tom's Park is like that too. The muscle you're trying to develop is your intuitive muscle. Now, obviously, that's just a metaphor. It's your intuition. But it works the same way. So if you're having trouble getting there, that means you're having trouble imagining. Well, everybody can imagine. And no doubt, the person that wrote that can imagine things. Maybe they just can't imagine things on purpose very well. Well, just practice. Go there and say, okay, here I am. There's Uncle Tom's food stand, and there's the beach. How does the sand feel? How does the water feel? How cold is it? Does it splash? Can I swim in it? Well, just imagine yourself doing it. So don't go there with the idea that a miracle is going to happen. I'm going to go to Tom's Park and suddenly, ta-da, I'm going to be free to travel around in the larger consciousness system. Just go there with your imagination and go get a paddle boat, paddle it around, see what you see. Look down, see any fish, see any frogs. Just do whatever you might do and just keep doing that. And if it's hard for you at first, it's almost like you have to go down a list. There's a lake, there's a beach, there's this, and you're kind of going through the list. Well, go through the list if that's where you have to start. But the 10th time you're going through that list, you won't need the list. And the 20th time you go through that list, you only have to think about it. All those things will just be part of your life. And the 50th time you go there, the story will just start to unfold all by itself. So that's the thing. It's a tool to just experience.
And there's a real attitude change towards imagination that you're inviting for us that I'm appreciating, if I'm picking up right, Tom, which is usually a lot of us in this culture talk about imagination in sort of a denigrative way, like, it's just my imagination, I'm making it up. And what I hear you saying, if I'm hearing right, is that making things up is one of the most powerful capacities we have as units of consciousness, and that can be used very strategically with Tom's Park in tandem. So practicing imagination, we're almost encouraged to make it up. Like, yes, make it up, make up things, and just keep making them up. And then over time, it weaves with the park and the purposes of the park.
Right. That is exactly right. Imagination is a very powerful tool. And some people learn to use it as a powerful tool, even though they've never heard of, a larger conscious system or Tom's Park or ever thought about it. But many people, let's say someone who is going to have to stand up in front of 100 people and give a speech. Well, they will find that if they go give that speech by themselves in an empty room, but they imagine that there's a bunch of people out there, and they imagine that, here's the blackboard, or maybe they even have a projector and projects it on a wall or something, and they go through that talk. They go through it just like they're there, and they're imagining they're there. Well, they will find the first time they do that, they'll stumble, they'll make mistakes, they'll find things they don't want to say that they said and things that they wanted to say but didn't, and it'll be a jumble. But by the 10th time they've gone through that, it'll be smooth, it'll be slick, they'll hit all the points they want to hit, and it will be good. And by the 15th time they've done it, they won't even be frightened anymore. They'll walk in front of those people, and it'll be something they've done enough times that they just kind of turn on automatic mode, and there they do. And they can rattle it right off, and it looks like they've spoken in front of people, their whole life. So that's just using your imagination as an effective tool. And that's true of anything. If you can, athletes will tell you, athletes that are, at the very top of their game, really, really good athletes will tell you that their performance is 70% their mindset, where their mind is. Because all athletes work out in the gym, they all train, they all practice, they all do whatever it is that activity. And all of them have bodies that are developed to do that thing, that they're doing in their athlete. But the difference between the winners and the not winners is the mind, how focused you can have your intent on it. Because to be a really good athlete, you have to do your athletic stuff in the intuitive state, not in the intellectual state, because the intellectual state is way too slow and bulky to try to say, oh, is my arm just right? Is my stride just right? Am I doing this? You're thinking about that, you're going to stumble and fall on your face. That doesn't help. It all has to just flow. They call that, they say, well, you go over it enough that you have muscle memory. Your muscles don't have any memory. That's just a metaphor that people say because they don't know how else to explain it. But the muscles seem to know what to do. You're working in the intuitive space. In the intuitive space, you don't have to decide what to do. The knowledge is just there. That's how the intuitive space works. When you touch type, you don't have to look at each key and see where it is. Your fingers, you don't think, oh, the T's over here, the E's up there, the O's down here. You don't think about that. The fingers just go where they need to go when they need to go there. You learn to touch type in an intuitive space. So you'll never be a good typist or a good athlete if you work in the intellect. You see, so that muscle memory is not memory in a muscle. That muscle memory isn't that the muscle just gets used to doing that so it gets good at it. It's that you in an intuitive space don't have to process it linearly. You process it holistically. You get the whole thing and your body just moves the way it needs to move to do what it is you're trying to do, whether it's touch type or athletics or whatever. And that's true of everything you do. You're actually not good at most things until you're able to do them in the intuitive space. As long as you're doing them in the intellectual space, you're still practicing, and you're not very good at it yet. Playing a piano, anything that you want to name. You don't get good at it until you perform in an intuitive space. What do we say? Become one with the piano, become one with the typewriter, become one with the javelin or the hockey stick or whatever your athleticism is taking you. So that means you get into the intuitive state. That's the point of it. So yes, imagination is basically the way we do that. We get it into our intuitive state by practice through the imagination. So you practice that speech and practice that speech and practice that speech, and now it becomes intuitive. You don't have to think about what you're going to say. It just comes up when you need to say it. So, yes, the imagination is a very effective tool, and people use it all the time to prepare for things, to get ready, to focus their minds, to get serious, to concentrate, whatever. That imagination is the premier tool for doing that. But yes, our culture kind of blows it off as junk. Yeah, it's just my imagination. It isn't real, doesn't matter. Oh, it's just a dream. Wasn't real, doesn't matter. We do the same with dreaming. Dreams do matter. They give us choices, and we make those choices. And those choices help us evolve or de-evolve. That's important. So those choices in a dream are just as important as the choices you make here, and they're all just as important as the choices you make in Tom's Park. They're all choices that you make as a consciousness. And all of them are just as effective as any others in helping you evolve or de-evolve.
So speaking of evolving, ways to evolve and de-evolve, many people say that you do not usually share stories of your experience, right? Because you think that whether people believe it or not is non-consequential. Now, coming from the Discord community and the MBT community in general, there's a sense that you made a shift in Tom's Park, where you do share some of your stories and some of your experience. So is that an intentional shift, or was there really such a shift? Could you talk more about that?
Well, Andy, tell me more what you mean in Tom's Park. You mean in the text, or you just mean in the nature of the park?
Nathan, what do you think?
Yeah, so like the details around, Blackbeard's ship and like love and the history of that, and the intent amplifier and how it's from this other place and they're rare, and these details that are just super fun and engaging to read. And we had some community members asking, like, the classic question, is that real? So
yeah, of course, that's the wrong question. Is it real is just not a valuable question. What it does is it turns your attention away from what matters towards something that doesn't matter. And that's not helpful. So, of course, it's real. It's real because it puts you in spaces where you have choices. And obviously I had fun when I was doing that. I had this band of pirates generate the modern banking system, which has a little humor in it. So sure, I had fun while I did this. But what I did is I tried to set people up to have an experience, set people up. Here's the situation. Here's the process. Here's the way it looks. Here are the rules. Here's this or that. Now, go experience it. So in a way, it's very much like a guided meditation where you are your own guide. You see, in a guided meditation, which is generally another thing I don't do, Andy, I don't do guided meditations because I want all of the people I'm trying to help to learn to do it on their own. Because I was at Monroe long enough, and there were always guided meditations there. And I know an awful lot of people got a lot out of it as long as they were guided. As soon as that guidance was taken away, they couldn't do anything, couldn't go anywhere. They were stuck because they got habituated to having the guidance. Then they can't do it without it. The guidance became like a ritual. And if they don't start and do the ritual right, then they can't get to where they're going. So I didn't want to load rituals and that kind of thing to people, even though it makes it easier in the beginning. It's much easier in the beginning to have a guided meditation than to just be left on your own and somebody tells you, go do it. That frustrates people in the beginning. But once you get past the very beginning, if you can stick with it long enough, you're so much better off not to have any rituals or processes that you need to go through. And then you can develop your own rituals and processes that work good with you. And then as you change them. And those are much more effective than trying to use somebody else's rituals and processes. So the trade-off is that it's much harder on the beginner if you don't give them guidance all the way through, but it's much better for them if they persevere enough to be able to get there on their own. It's a much better thing, and you can toss out all the guidance. You don't need guidance. You're independently able to do things without somebody holding your hand and leading you to a particular space. So in this Tom's Park, it is different. I do give guidance. The whole Tom's Park structure is basically guidance. And when you go there, it's a guided meditation, except you get to guide yourself as to what you want to do and what you want to work on. But the surroundings, the setup, the safety, the connection, the nature, the swimming, everything is there. So I set up all these things that are right there and then let you be the guide that puts them together. But when you work in Tom's Park, it's very much a guided meditation. It's just that I've now tricked you into being your own guide by giving you a smorgasbord of things to do. So yeah, I did change there some. Instead of, I don't do guidance, I let you all go on your own. this is kind of a nice marriage of those two opposites of guidance and no guidance. You know, there's enough structure there to guide people to get them going. Like the person that asked the question, Nathan said, you know, how do I get into the park? Well, you just use your imagination. That's all the guidance that I'll give them. Because if I take them there, they'll follow along perfectly. Oh, now you're in Tom's Park. Look to your left. There's the Uncle Tom's sand. See, the beach is right behind it. Now let's walk around to the beach and feel that sand. And I can lead them through it, and they can go there and feel it and be it. But just because I'm leading them, that's not the way they need to be able to contact and to use the intuitive side. They have to be able to do it themselves. It has to be organic to them, which means they're just going to have to tough it out and go there and go through their list of things to see if that's what they have to do, which is all intellect, but do it until that list is so familiar to them that it drops away. So, yeah, Tom's Park is different than the things that I've done before. It's definitely more hand-holding in the sense I give you a structure, but at the same time, I make you, the hand doesn't lead you around in Tom's Park. It just gives you the situation and the opportunities. Then you have to take them. But you're right. I don't generally talk about my experiences, and I don't generally lead people anywhere in particular. I give them information, and they have to get over that initial big first hump just because they want to bad enough to keep trying, and then they will. And if they don't really want to get over it enough to keep trying, then they're actually not ready.
So we have some other questions, and they usually some other questions from Discord group, and they usually pertain to reality. Is this real, or where did you get this from, or where was it before Tom's Park? So I'll just read you one of them, and from Merlin, he asks about the Blackbeard's ship. Was it ever a real physical ship? What was Tom's Park before Tom's Park? Why did the LCS, the larger consciousness system, give you ownership of the park? So how would you respond to these questions? From what you're saying, you're almost like saying, well, these don't matter because they don't help you grow. But I'm not sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Yeah. So you answer Merlin. Hi, Merlin.
Yeah. Hi, Merlin.
To learn more about Time Out and NIMSA, go to nimsa.me. Join our social media and continue the conversation on Time Out for Humanity. Let us know what topics you would like us to cover.